Hi, I'm Russ McAllister and welcome back to another episode. Today I am fishing at Prairie Reservoir in Central Oregon. In my last episode, I was trolling crankbaits in deep river channels. On this trip, this is how I started out. It was not working. I had several fish jumping near where I was fishing and I thought they were rainbows, but they were not. They were mature kokanee. I switched tactics and started casting a spoon. I was casting a copper-colored Al's goldfish. The best tactic I found was to wait for several fish to jump and then cast just beyond the center of the splash ring. I would let the spoon fall for 3 or 4 seconds, then raise it up again and let it fall again. The sequence proved to be the most effective. I ended up retaining 3 or 4 of these fish. As I filleted them, they cut a brilliant red and tasted fantastic. I decided I was going to search out what I thought would be more kokanee and moved closer to some of the river channels where they flow into Prairie Reservoir. I expected to find a really big school of kokanee and have really good kokanee fishing. I did not. What I found were a bunch of cranebows. On my depth finder, I could see the temperature change very drastically. The surface temperature changed from almost 70 degrees to almost being in the 40s. In these cooler water areas, I found rainbows really heavily concentrated. The depth in these areas was really incredibly shallow, less than 6 feet of water. The Al's goldfish spoon I was fishing was too heavy and kept catching the bottom, so I switched to a Brad's Mini Wiggler in copper. My technique was fan casting with a pretty heavy jerk motion in my retrieve. After a couple aggressive twitches or jerks, I would then stop the bait. This allowed the fish to catch it. I also used a Rapala ripstop minnow. I chose these plugs because they float. Both of these lures have a good wiggle action and only dive to about 3 feet, meaning that I didn't catch the bottom, and if I was coming up on a stick, I could just let it float to the surface and avoid getting snagged. In these cold water areas, the water was also much clearer than the rest of the lake, which allowed me to do some sight casting. Key details to being successful doing this were reducing boat noise by using my electric bow mount trolling motor. Once I got in a good location, I would stop the boat, anchor and/or spot lock, and then I would let the area settle down for about 10 minutes. Since the water was shallow and clear, casting at or around structure, much like you were bass fishing, was very important. Sharp drop-off banks with a shadow, downed logs, and weed pockets were key locations. If it was possible, I would cast parallel to a deep bank with a shadow. I would also cast parallel to a downed log and try and cast past the log. There were several isolated green weed clumps that held fish. Casting past those and then running my bait parallel to those was also very important. The strikes I was able to induce always came just before the cover, or while I was passing the middle of it, or just past it. Occasionally I had fish follow the bait all the way to the boat and had 1 or 2 hookups as I paused the lure right at the boat. I was fishing braided line with a fluorocarbon leader. I started out with a monofilament leader, but the fish seemed to be a little bit line shy, so 8-pound fluorocarbon was in order. On this outing, I definitely caught way fewer fish than I saw. It seemed like about 1 out of 5 fish that I could see or had follow my bait would end up turning into a hookup. There were a few other factors that would cause me to change locations periodically. The first is a family of otters, and the second are cormorants. If the otters or the birds started working an area I was fishing, it always seemed to just totally kill the bite. I gotta say, this is one of the coolest things that I have discovered in a very long time. Sight casting at big rainbows, sight casting at pretty big kokanee is a great way to spend an afternoon and evening in the mountains. Most of the kokanee were on the outer edge of the sunken forest at Crane Prairie, right where the cold water refuge begins. Most of the rainbow were just inside that in a little bit shallower water. Most rainbows I caught on this outing were in 5 to 6 feet of water. The kokanee were out in the 10 to 12 foot range. I did encounter a fair number of wild fish. Please take care when releasing them. Once again, thanks for watching my video, and tight lines.